Good Yom Tov, everyone. And as we approach the Chag HaGeula, we're doing a Sikha today that is in the main about Yutas Kislev and a preparation. And we're looking forward to this being the Chag HaGeula that we've been waiting for a very, very long time. First, I want to begin with sharing Simchas. Chani Rappaport's daughter, Tzivi Hecht, just had a daughter this morning. Wish her Mazel Tov. Chana Man's grandson, Shner Zalman Man, had his bar mitzvah yesterday. Yud Gimel Kislev. We wish him and the whole mishpacha Mazel Tov. One of our classmates' birthday is today. We wish Esther Friedman, Arichas Yamim, V'shanim Teves, lange gebenchte gesunte Jahren, filled with nachas and simchas. We are still awaiting a very, very big Yeshua. We are learning in the schus that all those that have to be reunited with their families should be reunited immediately in health, in good health, in body and mind, and that all those that need a healing should have a refuah shalema miyad, and that all of us, all of Klal Yisrael, should be protected and should have a Yeshua miyad. And we're learning the schos of a refuah shalema for Harav Yosef Yitzchak ben Sima Chasia. We're going to begin our Sikha. Again, Parshas Vayishlach, Chelek Tezvav. Ala pasuk Vayivaser Yaakov levadai matzinu kama perushim umehem. On the pasuk and on the words, and Yaakov remained alone. And this is on the cusp of his meeting with Esav after so many years. We find a number of commentaries, and among them, B'Gemara Ne'emar, V'huva b'shinui lashon b'perish Rashi el HaTorah, and the Gemara explains this concept of Yaakov remaining alone, and Rashi brings this down with this parish down from the Gemara with a slight change in terminology. Nishtayer al pachim ktanim, that Yaakov tarried because of small jugs or pitchers. V'hadavar merumas b'teva levadai, and the Gemara teaches that this is alluded to in the word levadai, kimuva b'perish rabbeinu balei haTosfos al tikri levadai ela lechadai, that the Tosfos taught that don't read the word levadai with a vase, which would mean alone, but also read it lechadai because of his pitcher, because of his jug. So that's one explanation. Beis, the Medrash Isa, and the Medrash brings down Ma Kadosh Baruch Hu Kasav Boi V'Nizgav Hashem Levadai, just as it says about the Eibishter that when Mashiach comes, Hashem will reign alone. Af Yaakov Vayivaser Yaakov Levadai. So this should be understood as Yaakov being alone, singular and unparalleled in his stature, in his spiritual stature. Kefishin is bar pamim rabbis, and the Rebbe says, as has been explained multiple times, and I wish I would have thought to either research this or ask people that know. That's really how my research happens. I just ask people that know. If this was ever a thing with the previous Rabbeim, or we find this elsewhere, but we know by the Rebbe that one of the things that he teaches constantly is that when you have different ways of understanding the same word or the same pasuk or the same inyan, so they all have to be connected on some inherent level. And I believe that this is a chiddush of the Rebbe alone. That, in other words, when you look at different perushim, you shouldn't understand them as, oh, interesting, different ways of explaining the same thing, but very different, divergent views, but rather that if they're all connected to the same inyan or the same word or the same pasuk, then there is an intrinsic connection between all of these perushim. So the Rebbe says, Kefishin is bar pam rabbis, as has been explained many times. Kol ha-perushim shenemru b'pasuk echad, or mikol shekain b'teva achas. All commentary, that is taught on the same pasuk, and how much more so on the same word. Yesh beineim kesher teichani b'tzarech lahavin. Mahi hashaychus ben shnei perushim benidun didan, va'adra b'lechayir perushim hafchim hin. So there has to be a conceptual connection between the different ways of understanding a pasuk or a word or a concept. And so we have to understand, in our case here, what is the connection between these two things, what the Gemara teaches and what the Medrash teaches. And on the contrary, seemingly, these two explanations are actually opposing, they're opposites. Because Lafi Perish HaGemara, according to what the Gemara teaches, Noiser Yaakov Levadai Litzerch Dvarim Kitanim Shechashivusam Haisa Mu'etes B'Yoser. Because according to the Gemara, that he stayed because of Pachim Kitanim, because of small jugs or pitchers. So seemingly, this is about small things, things whose importance is minor. So that's according to how the Gemara teaches it. So it seems like it's about something that's not hugely important. But when you look at how the Medrash understands Vayivasa Yaakov levadai, Hare Inyan Vayivasa Yaakov levadai hu tachlis ha'ilui v'hamayla. So according to the Medrash, this is like the highest compliment and the greatest thing you could possibly say, that Yaakov's aloneness mirrors or in some way replicates or embodies Hashem's uniqueness and Hashem's being only. Zehu al derech v'nizkar Hashem levadai etzel kadosh baruch hu. So this would be paralleling Yaakov's aloneness to Hashem's singularity, inyan ha'achdus v'hisgalus shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ba'ofen she'yeh rak la'ased lovei b'yom ha'hu k'hemshech ha'kosov. And not only is it something that you can only say about Hashem, but it's about Hashem's hisgalus, the way it will be la'ased lovei b'yom ha'hu. And here the Medrash is saying that this is already somehow manifest in Yaakov Avinu. So how do we understand the connection between these two that seem to be dichotomous, one against the other? Yadua Masha Kosav Hashalah. So in Sif Beis, the Rebbe says that we have to remember what the Shalah taught us. And this again is something that the Rebbe always returned to. Shekol Mayed Mimayade Hashana Mirumaz beparsha b'Torah hanikreis bisman sheboy chal mayedzeh. That the Shalah taught that every single Yom Tov is alluded to in the parsha that is read around that Yom Tov. Umizeh muvam b'negei lemayed yutes Kislev hachal b'kama shana b'chein b'shana zu b'Shabbos parshas Vayishlach. So in many years, this year it's not going to be Parshas Vayishlach, but the Rebbe says that in many years it's either on that Shabbos or it's around that Shabbos. So the essence and the concept that is that is inherent in Yutes Kislev, what Yutes Kislev is all about, is alluded to in Parshas Vayishlach. V'yuvam bahaktim, and we'll understand this by prefacing. V'tam hisgalus toris hachasidus b'doros hacharenes dafka, v'loi b'doros hakoyim b'shonim b'nei malachim. The reasons that we were given for the revelation of toris hachasidus in these last generation specifically, and not in early generations, about which the Gemara says that they were like B'nai Malachim. They were of much greater spiritual stature. And I always wondered in my head, like, I think that the last thing the Gemara says is that Kechagavim, like grasshoppers, and that was already a few thousand years ago. So I don't know what we are in that hierarchy. if there was angels and there were donkeys and there was grasshoppers, and but whatever it is, as to why Hasidus was revealed dafke in these later generations, Machinu Shnei Hesberim, we find two explanations. Aleph, one explanation is bitzad hachoshech hakafol v'hamechufol shenitoisav b'doros hacharenim ubefrat b'dora deikvus demashiach. So one explanation is that Hasidus had to come into the world because of the doubled and redoubled darkness that is the characteristic of these later generations, and specifically the generation of Ikvus Mashiach, where we could hear that. Yes, you're right. Thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, it is Parshas Vayishlach. Thank you. Why did everybody wait so long to call me out on this? Tzumished. Again, I can make excuses for myself. Again, you might not believe this, but again, I was traveling yesterday for weddings, Baruch Hashem, but okay, thank you. This is Parshas Vayishlach. Maybe you think I live in a different planet where it's not Parshas Vayishlach. Okay, so one explanation is that because of the doubled and redoubled the intensity of the darkness, yesh hechrach unechitzos ba'or nala yoser sheyizgaber gam al choshech zeh. So therefore, there is an imperative, there is a necessity for a higher type of light that could overcome this very, very intense darkness. Another explanation, Beis, al derech mashakaso b'kitzvei Harizal. The second explanation is in keeping with what the Arizal taught. And this is even brought down lahalacha in the Magen Avram and the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe, who is the Baal HaGeula v'Hasimcha of Yutes Kislev. Shebe'erev Shabbos yesh litoim mima'acholei haShabbos tayameh chayim zachu. That just like there is an Indian in halacha that on Erev Shabbos you should taste from the foods of Shabbos, that you should have a schus to taste in that life of the eternal Shabbos that we're waiting for. Kain hugam b'negei l'seder hayamim haklali deshis alfin shonin. So too do we have this concept in the 6 millennia that mirror the 6 days of creation. And so we know where we are right now, right? We're in Mamish in Erev Shabbos. Shebedaris hachrenim koidim bias hamashiach bizman Erev Shabbos shalofnei yom shekula Shabbos. So right now, these last generations, our generation and the generations before, are we are the generations right before Mashiach comes. This is the time of Erev Shabbos that comes right before the day that is called Yom Shekulei Shabbos, the everlasting Shabbos. And at this time, Nimsheches ha'ara b'derech te'ima al koponim mehagilu shel pnimius haTorah shetizgala b'shleimusa al yidei Mashiach tzedkenu. So at this time, there is already a radiation of the light in the same way that you taste of foods. We are already able to taste of the revelation of Pnimius HaTorah that will be revealed in its fullness through Mashiach tzedkenu. Now the Rebbe says, "Va'af b'shnei hesberim elu kayam shnei haktzavos al derech vayivasa Yaakov levadei kanal." And so here too, in these two explanations as to why Hasidus has been revealed, Dafka now, we have again the same polarity. We have two opposing explanations, just like we had on the words Vayivasa Yaakov levadei. Lefia has beharishanimsa shegilui or Hasidus b'doyos hachreinos hu mitzad chisusam. So according to the first explanation, we understand that the revelation of the light of Hasidus comes to these last generations because of our inferior status. Machmas goydel hachoshech b'dayos elu nidrash lumasay gilu ha'ar hanala shel pnimis haTorah. Because of the tremendous darkness of these generations, it is necessary to have the le'umazeh, to have the opposing revelation of the highest type of light of Pnimis HaTorah. That's according to the first explanation. But in contradistinction, according to the second explanation, but the second explanation tells us that the revelation of Hasidus in these later generations flows from the superior quality of this time. Because right now we are already, by Lichbenchen, we're definitely in Erev Shabbos after Chatzos, and yesh boi kvar me'ein hagilu dila asid. And for this reason, we are already experiencing a gilui of the future. So we have, again, the same two, that same binary of two reasons that seem to be opposed one to the other. Gimel, v'habir bazeh. And the explanation is as follows. Yadua, it's known, sheyutes Kislev, hevi lahascholas ikar hakiyum shel yafutzu ma'yanasecha chutza. It's well known that Yutes Kislev brought to the beginning of the fulfillment of the words of Mashiach, when will I come? L'chsheyafutzu ma'yanasecha chutza. When your well springs, Mashiach said to the Baal Shem Tov, when the well springs of Chasidus will be spread to the outlying places. Hafatzas ma'yanes haChasidus l'chol Yisrael gam le'elu hanimtzaim chutza. That is the dissemination and the promulgation of the well springs of Hasidus to all Jews, including those that seem to be on the periphery. Kfar nisbar pa'amim rabbis, and the Rebbe says, this has already been explained many times, diuk halashon yafutzu ma'yanasecha chutza. The specificity of these words of spreading the well springs to the outlying places. Sheperushai. What is the explanation of these words according to this exacting explanation? Shahamayanais atzmam tzrichim lahagia chutza. That the well springs themselves have to reach into this area called chutza, this outlying area. Kilamar, that is to say, ein dai bekach shetia lemayanis hashpa ala chutza. It's not enough that the water should flow to the outlying areas from the well springs, ve'eshahem atzmam yisharu b'mkaimam, but the well springs themselves should remain where they are. Elahem gufa tzrichim lihimatze b'chutza. But no, but the well springs themselves have to be transported to the outlying areas. Yes, sir, Al-Kain, and even more. The well springs themselves that are outside, meaning out of where it's intuitive that they should be, they then have to be in a state of yafutzu. What does this mean? Liyos nefutzim umispashtim bechutza. They have to be completely spread out and publicized in the chutza. So it's not enough that the wellspring itself should be taken chutza, but in the chutza itself, the well springs have to be all over the place. I mean, in the positive sense that they are everywhere. Ad shekol prat unukuda bechutza yechadur b'mayanos ela. Until every aspect of the chutza is saturated and suffused and pervaded with the ma'ayanos. The chevon shetchilas kol inyanim hi b'Torah, and because the Torah is the prototype of everything. So anything that has to happen first in Torah. Move on. So it's understood. Shagam inyan yafutzu ma'inasecha chutza hahafotza v'hagilui shel pnimius haTorah le'elu miYisrael hanimtzoim chutza. So if everything has to begin in Torah, this too, that the inyan of yafutzu ma'inasecha chutza, the spreading and the promulgating of the revelation of Pnimius HaTorah to those of Bnei Yisrael that might be deemed or termed chutza, haschalasa hi bekach shahamayana shel Pnimius HaTorah boim l'dei gilui b'nigla d'Torah ad shenasim lachodim mamash. So the beginning of this project or process, it begins with the Mayanis of Pnimius HaTorah coming to revelation through what is revealed in Nigla d'Torah until they become one and the same. So not only do the Mayanis have to be taken out of the Pnim and brought to Chutzah, and not only do the Mayanis have to pervade every aspect of the Chutzah, but it has to be in a way where it's not a separate aspect. It's not an overlay. It's not superimposed. It becomes one and the same thing. And the Rebbe says, like, it begins when you can't separate the nigla of Torah from the Chasidus. When it becomes so much one thing, that they become, like the Rebbe says here, la'achodim mamash. Gam lifnei Rabbeinu Hazaken, and here the Rebbe explains his vision. In other words, what he's explaining to us. He says, even before the Alter Rebbe, hayu gedolei Yisrael shahayu gedolim b'shnei chelkei haTorah. There were great sages amongst the Jews, and they were great scholars in both aspects or both facets of the Torah. Both in the revealed and in the hidden aspects of the Torah. Upashut shelimuda benister shebetorah garam lekach shelimud hanigel shebetorah al yadam haya ba'ifan acher. And it goes without saying, it's self-understood that the fact that they studied Nistar impacted the way that they studied Nigla. That goes without saying. Ach afal pikein, but still and all, haya hadavar ba'ifin shenoisru elu shnei chalokim nifradim, Galia v'sasim. But still and all, these two aspects of the Torah remain separate. The revealed and the hidden were still considered two different realms. V'zeh haya toichen hachidush shel Admar Hazaken. And this is actually the novelty of what the Alter Rebbe accomplished, that he unified, he connected, he created a synergy between these two aspects so that they should become one. Dalet. Kevon sheYisrael miskashron ba'araisa v'yeser al kein hichayenu. Because Bnei Yisrael are connected and one with the Torah, and more than that, the Torah is our life. V'Yisrael v'araisa kulachad, and Bnei Yisrael and the Torah are one. Hare move on, so it's understood. Shekashem sheyeshna inyan yafutzu ma'inasecha chutza b'Torah ichutz sasim v'galia daraisa. So it's understood that just like there is this ultimate, well, maybe not ultimate, but this novel idea in Yafutu Ma'inasecha Chutza that there should be the unification of the sasim, the hidden, and the galia and the revealed of Torah. Kain hu adavar gam b'neshamas Yisrael. So the same thing is reflected and revealed in terms of the neshamas of Bnei Yisrael. And this happens al yidei gilui Torahs hachasidus. It happens through the revelation of Torahs hachasidus. That nasa inyan yafutu ma'inasecha chutza ba'adam gufa ichut sasim v'galia shebenishmasa. That this happens within each one of our inner landscapes. Within the person itself, there is this unification of the hidden and the revealed of the neshama. Gam lifnei gilui Torah Chasidus hishpia or ha'emuna sosim de nishmasa shalamayla mahasechel gam al hakochos hagiluyim. And yes, the Rebbe says, just like there were people before the Alter Rebbe's time that they studied Nistar, and their study of Nistar impacted their study of the Nigla Torah, so too before the Gilui Torah Chasidus, there was, of course, an effect from the hidden part of the neshama, which is the light of emunah, on the seichel and the revealed kochos of a person. That existed already. Kach shegam kochos haseichel ba'amidas yeh ba'ofen acher. That hashpah effectuated that the kochos of seichel and the midas should be impacted by the light of the emunah, which is a hidden part of the neshama, and should be changed. Aval mikol makom nishara emuna atzma b'fchina sosim lamayla min haseichel galia. But still, in all, emuna remained hidden in the person, in the neshama, and it remained hovering above, separate from the seichel, from that which is revealed. But Rabbeinu Hazaken Chidesh, but the Alter Rebbe came and created a novel paradigm. Sha'emuna v'hakabolas ol shalamayla min haseichel yachderu es ha'adam kulei. That the emuna and the kabbalas ol, that was always something that was higher than seichel, that was separated from seichel, should suffuse the person completely. Kach shehim atzmam yumshuchu begalia denishmasa v'yisachdu ima. So much so that the or of the emuna and kabbalas ol should be brought down to the revealed aspects of the neshama and should be again united with it. B'seichel atzma yiskablu v'yurgishu anyanim shalamayla min haseichel. That the seichel itself should be able to integrate and be able to resonate, maybe should feel in yanim that earlier were lamayla min haseichel. Hey, kishem she'etzel kol echad kiprat chitcha hachasidus es kiyum yafutu ma'nesecha chutza. Just like this was effectuated in the microcosm, in each person, this yafutu ma'nesecha chutza, which the Rebbe explains is the ichud hamayon shebeneshama im chutza shebeneshama, the bringing together, the synergy of the ma'ayan of the neshama, the deepest part of the neshama, the hidden part of the neshama, with the chutza, with the more outlying or more revealed aspects of the neshama. Kain hugam legabe Yisrael kichlal. So too did this happen, and is this the reality in the macrocosm, in all of Bnei Yisrael, as we are one, asher kulam yachad heim koima achash lema, as we are literally one body. So here again, it would be so useful if I could create a chart and you could see in the cells, but I know you see it in your mind's eye, you see the different cells. So the Rebbe begins with the words Vayivasa Yaakov Levada. He gives us two explanations. They seem to be not only divergent, but dichotomous. And then he says, well, actually, this is mirrored in the two reasons for why Hasidus was revealed in the later generations. And then he explains that bringing together what seem to be dichotomous features is actually what the revelation of Hasidus is all about. And he explains it in the fact that the Mayan has to go chutza, and how the Mayan has to affect the chutza, that they have to become one, that they don't remain two things, and how this happens in the inner landscape of each person, in the microcosm, and how it happens on the macrocosmic level, and how it happens, first of all, I skipped that, the Rebbe says first it has to begin in Torah itself, in how the Nigla and Nister become one. Hey. The second paragraph in Hey. And now the Rebbe says something with some another level within the macrocosm. And he teases out what he means. Rashi Alpha Yisrael, Shahim Bechinas Reish Umayach. So the heads of the legions or the myriads of Bnei Yisrael, who are considered the head and the brain, Shel Yisrael, Heim Bechinas Ma'ayan. So this you could call the modality of the Ma'ayan, of the wellspring, of the hidden, of the nucleus, of the nexus. Ba'avar, Lifnei Gilui Chasidus, in the past, before Chasidus was revealed, Seder Hadvarim Haya, how were things operating? Shegdele Yisrael Hayu Mufrashim Umisugarim Ba'arba Amaisehem. So the great sages were kind of cordoned off in the ivory tower. They were in their own, Dalet Amais. They were learning. They were separate. Yes, it's true. They did have hashpah on the rest of Bnei. In the same way that the Rebbe explains that before Gilui HaChasidus, there were always people that studied Nistar and Nigla. And it was always that the Nistar had to, by definition, impact the way they learned Nigla. But it wasn't one thing. It remained two things. In the same way, historically, the greats among Bnei Yisrael always kind of kept to themselves. They had their place. Yes, it's true that they had hashpah on Bnei Yisrael, either because their influence expressed itself in how they taught Torah, or simply in what they modeled. They modeled the proper behavior, and in that way they affected Bnei Yisrael. But they themselves were separate from chutza, from what was in the pedestrian street. But it was, even though they remained separate and kind of, you could say, aloof, yes, they did have a hashpah. The Seder Havodah Shel Yafutu Meinesecha Chutza Chidesh. But what else was a novelty of the avodah of Yafutu Meinesecha Chutza? Shegidei Yisrael lo yistagru ba'arba amaisehem. That the greats among Bnei Yisrael should not lock themselves off, close themselves off in their Dalet Amos. Ela yagiu ba'atzmam chutza. And you can't read or learn these words without thinking of how much time the Rebbe spent in the public thoroughfare. It's like mind-boggling how much time the Rebbe spent with us. But the Rebbe says that a novel aspect of Yafutu Meinesecha Chutza is that the great sages should arrive by themselves chutza. Ubiyosem chutza, yiru be'oinei amam. And when they're in the chutza, they will see the poverty, the impoverishment of their people. Ein ani ela b'deya. And the most potent form of poverty is a paucity in knowledge, where you're poor because you don't have deya. V'yidabru ela ani b'lashon ba'os yeshu mavin. And after Yutas Kislev, and with the ensuing generations, and every generation more and more, like in Archa, but we saw this like crescendo, that they should speak to the ani, these great sages, the Mayan should speak to the chutza in the language that they understand. Yes, sir, Alkain, and even more. Because it is imperative on the wellspring to reach every point and every detail of the chutzah. So it's move on, it's understood. Shahachidush ha'amor kailel es mashagdele Yisrael moisrim atzmam gam avor ha'inyanim hagashmim shel am Yisrael. And so once you understand that the mayan has to pervade every aspect of the chutzah, that means that they have to exert themselves for the material, physical aspects of Am Yisrael as well. And we saw this already starting from the Alter Rebbe, the emphasis on Kailel Chabad and sending money to Israel and setting up an infrastructure to literally to feed the poor. Vav. Now, next cell. HaTorah hi nishmas ha'olam. The Torah is the vivifying force, it's the soul of the world. Kedivrei Chazal, sha'olam nivra b'shvil HaTorah shenekreis reishis. Like Chazal teach, Rashi cites, the very first Rashi, that the Torah was that the world was created because of the Torah, meaning to be the realm in which the Torah is effectuated. Umizeh move on. Shekevon shepal yutes Kislev chidush b'Torah nifal mimela chidush b'dugma lezeh gam ba'olam. So it's understood, if the Torah is the soul of the world, then if Yutes Kislev created a novelty in Torah, that means that there was a novel situation created in the world entire. Vahabir, and to explain. Yadua, it's known, shemitzad hahelem shala olam atzmai, that because of the very nature of the world, that the world obfuscates, that's why it's olam miloshen helem, efsher lahasig rak es ha'or ha'eliki ha'melubash b'toich ha'olam. So because of the way the world was created, we can only access godly light as it is vested within the world. And that is referred to in Chassidus as Shem Elikim b'gematria teva. That the light that we experience is refracted through the Shem Elikim, and the Shem Elikim is b'gematria teva. Al yedei nature. Al yedei his boinenus binyonei ha'olam chulei. That one of the most direct ways in which we experience Elokus is by contemplating the world in all of its miraculousness, every aspect thereof. And through this, efsher lahagia liyadio lahakara sheyesh manig leberazu. And when you look at the world, never mind the world, mipsari echze elaka, just study eyelashes, you have to come to the recognition that there is a master to this palace, to everything that's going on. But it's not possible to access the Shem Havaya, the aspect of Hashem that hovers above this world, that is transcendent, that is soiviv kol almin. V'hagam sheyeshna gilu Shem Havaya ba'olam, al yedei hanisim hamisrach Hashem mizman lezman, and although there is a glimmer of revelation of the Shem Havaya in the world through the modality of miracles that happen from time to time, but these miracles are not something that are inherent to the world itself. On the contrary, we call them miracles because zehu inyan shel shidud hateva va'elam. A miracle is something that transforms the very nature of the world. In other words, it's separate from the world. It's an overlay. It's not a feature. Chasidus pa'ala v'chitra, but Chasidus came and effected a novelty. That there should be in the world itself a revelation of godliness that really is above the world. V'zehu shahachasidus miva'eres gam bahasbar shel seichul enushi. And this novelty expresses itself in that Chassidus could be explained and grasped through our mortal cognition, through our intelligence. How? Al yidei mishalim v'chulei minyanei elam, through metaphor and parables from material, physical, corporeal aspects of this world. And through this, we can see how the world became unified with the godly light that before this time hovered above the world. Zayin. Vayishlach, and we could say, okay, moving along on your chart to the next cell, we could say, that through this we can understand the words of the Alter Rebbe in his famous letter, that Hashem did wondrous things and great and vaunted things ba'aretz, in the world, in the earth. And we know there's so many sikhs where the Rebbe speaks about how the Alter Rebbe could have done so many nisim, but he wanted that the goyim around him should be part of the geula. He could have stopped the boat by himself, but he wanted that the whoever it was that was in charge of the boat should do it, and so on and so forth. So it should be Hifli Hashem la'asais ba'aretz. B'seider hanhaga shaboy manhig HaKadosh Baruch Hu Salama yeshnam shnei ofanim. So the way the Eibishter runs his world, there are two modalities. Aleph, hanhaga al pi teva, shaba ein nikeres v'nireis b'gilui hachayus ha'elokis. V'hanhaga zu ba mitzat shem elokim. So in the main, there's a modality where you don't recognize and you cannot see in a revealed way the vivifying aspect of this world on the part of Hashem. And this is mitzad shem elokim. But there's beis, there's hashgacha pratis begolui, but there's a second modality where you could see very specific hashgacha elyona that is revealed. Kach shenikorim b'hanhagas hateva ha'or v'hachayis eloki b'hashgacha pratis umakar hanhagazu shem havaya. And the hashgacha pratis is so revealed that you can recognize in the so-called natural means, you can recognize the godly light that vivifies everything, and you recognize the hashgacha pratis, and the source of this modality is the Shem Havaya. But now, ubahanhaga haba mishem Havaya. But in this second modality, gufa, in that modality itself, yeshnam ofanim shonim. There are three subsidiary aspects of the hanhaga al pishem Havaya. There's Aleph. The first would be oifen shel katnus kavyachol. Okay, this is a small, as it were, expression of the or of Shem Havaya as it comes down into this world. Ka'asher ha'hashgacha haprotis murgeshes b'toich hanhaga b'darchei hateva. And this expresses itself when the hashgacha pratis can be felt and recognized within the natural. The second subsidiary of how we can feel the or of the Shem Havaya in this world is oifen shel gadlus. And here the Rebbe brings us back to the words in the Alter Rebbe's letter, Higdil Hashem la'asais. So this is a greater manifestation. Kasher hashgacha pratis misgala, v'hi murgeshes b'hanhaga shelamayla mehateva. It's when the hashgacha pratis is revealed and is felt in actions that are beyond the natural. Al derech maimer chazal like what Chazal referenced, Dover Gadol Maaseh Merkava, that the whole vision of Yecheskel with the chariot of Hashem and the whole Maaseh Merkava, this would be exhibit A of Gadlus, the second modality, Higdil Hashem Lasais. Omnam Gam Higdil Meira al Hanhaga sheyesh la erech v'shaychus la Hanhaga shel Katnus. But the Rebbe says, but this is not the greatest level. Why? Because when you say it's a great level, that implies that it has some kind of connection to the small level. In other words, it's on a sliding scale. It's still on the same scale. You could compare the two. It's the same kind of manifestation. It's just a higher level of revelation. And sometimes it's even a much greater manifestation. But it's still not like, I guess, our contemporary expression, which we probably overuse. So now we'll take a moment to reclaim it in a different way. Al pi Chassidus, like when we say something's off the charts, which has become another iteration of saying awesome. Like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that remembers the word awesome used to be used only for like Hashem, right? Now it's for like whatever. So off the charts. Off the charts means there is no metric. There is nothing else that can be compared. It defies all of the ways in which things are measurable. So the Rebbe says that the Gadlus, as great as it might be, sometimes it's going to be a little greater, sometimes it's going to be very much greater, but it's still on the chart. And then you have Gimel, Hanhaga Ba'ofen Shel Hifli. And then you have the Hanhaga of the Eibusher that comes in the modality of Shem Havaya, that the Alter Rebbe calls Hifli, wondrous. Hamuvdeles mehanhagas hateva. It's completely, yes, Rachi, beyond. Exactly. Another word we overuse. It's beyond. But that's the Rebbe saying, that it's off the charts. It's beyond. It's not anything connected with Teva, Klal, Uklal. Nothing. Ches. Shloisha Ifanim Elu B'Hanhaga Mishem Havaya. So these three subsidiary modalities within the Hanhaga of the Eibishter that we can perceive, if we look properly, as coming from Shem Havaya, Him Shloisha Sugim Benisim. Okay, so they mirror three categories of miracles. Aleph. There's nisim hamilubashim b'darchei hateva. There are miracles that are vested in natural means. Achahanes einei nikar. So much so that the miracle is not even recognized, at least not until later. K'maynes Purim, like the story of Purim. Hagam shazui hanaga mishem havaya. Even though it's a transcendent type, a transcendent modality of Nes, Sharei Nires V'Nikeres Ba HaHashgacha HaProtis Mikol Hashgacha Protis, because you can see and recognize the tremendous Hashgacha Protis Mikol Makim, but still in all, Hareze Kaviyachol Ba'ofen Shel Katnus Kanal. But this is still called a small manifestation, Katnus. Then Beis, this Beis Nisim Gluyim, much more revealed miracles. Ella, sheyesh lahem achiza b'teva. They're much greater miracles, but there's still some relation to teva in these miracles. V'yesh leimar she'al derech zeh hayagam kibush Yericho al yidei Yeshua. As an example, the Rebbe says you could think about how Yeshua conquered Yericho. Because there was, of course, the tremendous miracle, but la'achar neis nefilas hachayma. But after the walls of Yericho, and Yericho was considered min ula shel aretz, it was the key to the whole land. right? So as soon as Yericho fell, Yeshua had access to the whole land, and it fell initially with something that was a transcendent miracle. Blow shofar, and that's going to make mortar walls fall. So so that miracle was not vested in the ways of nature. But but afterwards, the Navi tells us that the nation went up and they destroyed the enemy with a sword. So that was achiza b'teva. That was something that was connected to natural means of warfare. And a more detailed version of this can be seen in Milchemes Midyan, in the war with Midyan, where here's the famous words upon which one of the most famous Maimarim is based. Separate men from amongst you for the purpose of going to war. And they massed upon the enemy. And at the same time, and at the same time, no person will be lost in this war. And that's a war that is not natural. To not lose even one person in war, no, that's not natural. So here you have the twinning of the unnatural with the natural. And the Rebbe says in the brackets here, Al derech hasipor hayadua, and this brings to mind the famous story, Shepam ba el Rabbeinu Hazakein choila. Once a very sick person came to the Alter Rebbe, Shekol hareifim lo matzu refuah lemachalosai, and no doctors could find a cure for his illness. The Alter Rebbe told him he should eat a half a matzah shmura and water, and he was cured. Seemingly, this is oxymoronic. This is an action that was meant to be done with the sick body. Marzekes es habrios. And to strengthen the overall health. But on the other side, hari b'darchei hateva ein lematzah shmura umayim kol kesher l'refuah for There are no healing properties in matzah shmura and water for such a sick person. And it's such a sick person, shaharefim kfar noyashu mimenu. All the doctors gave up on ever healing him. So you want to tell me that in darchei hateva, half a shmur matzah and water, really interesting prescription. Inin who can know. The refuah, of course, was l'mayla min hateva, but it was done in a way that there was some hold on teva, because in teva, to heal a person, you often give them something. You give them some kind of preparation. You give them some kind of medicine. So that was the achiza b'teva. And then the third, gimel, nisim she'ein lahem afilu achiza b'teva. And then there are miracles that don't even have any achiza b'teva, no connection into nature. Ka'ofen hanitzachon hanisi shehizkir Chizkiyahu ani yashin al mitasi u'minatzeach. Like, for instance, the miraculous victory that Chizkiyahu described. He says, I'm sleeping in my bed and I'm victorious. So that's like the third level. There's no connection to teva altogether. You never went to a doctor. You never took a scan. It's no achiza b'teva altogether. Tess. And so here now we can parse the words of the Alter Rebbe, the specificity of Hifli Hashem v'higdil la'asais ba'aretz. Hifli, the Rebbe explained to us, is this wondrous level that's above. Higdil is the level where you see the twinning between nature and above nature, but it's still in the metric of nature. So the Rebbe says, Gilui Orach Hasidus B'Yutes Kislev, Loi Paul Rakas Orach Shem Avaya, Stam Ba'ofen Shel Katnus Kavyochel B'Darchei HaTeva. The revelation of the light of Hasidus and Yutes Kislev did not just effectuate a array of the Shem Havaya in a way of that there should be a small way in which Teva and L'mayla Mea Teva are synergized. V'loi rakas inyan higdil, and it wasn't even in a great way. Sheyesh l'shaychus l'Teva, that still has a connection to Teva. Ella pu'ulasoi ha'isa ba'ofen shel hifli Hashem L'mayla Mea Teva l'gamrei. But what Hasidus did to the world was transform it and elevate it to a place where it's higher than Teva completely. Le'idach gisa. And yet, on the other hand, Misayim Rabbeinu Hazakim B'Kosev la'asois ba'aretz. But the Alter Rebbe completes the pasuk with the words la'asois ba'aretz. It has to come down in the world. So that which completely transcends the world has to come down in the world. Ki hakavana v'hatachlis shel teres hachasidus hi lahamshich as inyan hifli havaya ha'ar elokisha ein lo kol achiz b'teva be'eretz gufa. Because if you had to summarize what Hasidus is all about, elevator pitch, it's to bring down this transcendent light that has no connection to Teva whatsoever, and have it saturate Oretz, the world itself, every aspect thereof. Yud. Yedua, it's known, Shahakoyach lechaber sosim begali shebetera, afal pishatera atzma chilka isem l'shnei chalakim nifradim. It's known that the ability to synthesize and bring together the hidden and the revealed aspects of Torah, even though the Torah itself divides them into two aspects. The Chelek Pnimius HaTorah Nikra Sosim, V'hainu she'al pi HaTorah ein hu begeder Galia, and Pnimius HaTorah is called the hidden aspect, meaning that it's not in the category of what is revealed. Noivea mikach she'Rabbeinu Hazaken himshich as etzem Pnimius HaTorah. The ability to bring together these two dichotomous aspects flows from the fact that the Alter Rebbe brought down the essence of Pnimius HaTorah. And this is a call to action to not hold back from atzmos, from essence. Like sometimes we think, whoa, that's like the Rebbe taught us, it has to be ayos de tikkun, ayos de tayu and kalim de tikkun. Of course, you need to do it in a way that's not going to overwhelm, and that's not going to cause a shviras hakelim, because tafasta meruba loy tafasta. When you try to do too much, then you don't grasp anything. But on the other hand, we have to take atzmos and share it and put it out into the public thoroughfare, because it's dafka from the etzem, from atzmos, that you're able to create this chibur. Hahischalkos, the separation between sosim begalut the Torah, he rak mitzad hispashto shel Torah, because the separation between the revealed and the hidden aspects of Torah is just on the level of how it's spread forth. In other words, it's on the more external expressions. Sheba kol inyan mugdar b'tzir shaloi, because on that level, every aspect has to somehow be categorized. Okay, so like this is true in every aspect of life. Okay, so you send children to school, and what happens in school? They have this subject and that subject and that subject and this teacher and this mechaneches. Everything is differentiated and there's all this multifariousness. But what do you really want? You want atzmos. You want a certain kind of chinuch. You really don't care if they get it through their diktuk teacher, or they get it from their from their Navi teacher, or they get it from whoever, Yadas, right? What you want is the atzmos. So all separations, all distinctions, all categorizations, they're just on the level of hispashtos. They're just on the way in which it's spread out, as it were. Aval mitzada etzem shel hatera, etzem pnimius hatera, ein kol hischalkus v'hagdaris. There are no distinctions. There are no delineations. There are no real categorizations. Etzem hatera hua atzmos hein shel hasasim vehein shel hagalya shebatera, because the essence of Torah is the essence of every aspect of Torah, both the hidden and the revealed. And therefore, once you expose the atzmos, all the so-called dichotomies fall away. And the Rebbe says, from amongst the examples that can be used to showcase this idea in halacha, he's going to give us one. Al pidin yesh b'Torah chiluke madregas mikala shebekalois v'ad chamura shebechamurais. There is a hierarchy in Torah. There is a hierarchy in halacha. There are things that are from the lenient to the most stringent. There are all kinds of delineations. Yes. Aval yacharim zois, but at the same time, psak din borarhu. There's a clear psak from the Rambam. Ha'aymer she'ein ha'Torah me'im Hashem. Afilu pasuk echad. Afilu teva achas. Im amar Moshe amrei mipi atzmai, harei ze koifer b'Torah. If a Jew says that there's even one pasuk, even one word that Moshe Rabbeinu said by himself, that it didn't come from Hashem, that means that he's repudiating the entire Torah. V'chein ha'koifer b'pirush v'hu Torah shebal peh. And the same thing about a Jew who repudiates the authenticity of the Torah Shebal Peh, that it comes from Hashem in its entirety. L'loi kol chiluk bein teva l'teva bein perish l'perish. And there's no difference between if this is a word of the Aseres HaDibros and it's this abstruse name in the lineage of Esav and his children. It doesn't matter, because atzmos is atzmos, and it suffuses and pervades every aspect. Yud Aleph. And so the same thing is true about the Jews. And as mentioned in Seifim Dalet and Heish, Yutes Kislev Paul Gam Ichut Sosim V'Gayusha B'Nishmasa, that Yutes Kislev effectuated this union, this synergy, this coming together of all aspects of the Jewish people and all the aspects within each person, and the unification of the emuna, which is the sasim, the hidden, with the galya b'nishmasa, with the revealed aspects of the keches hanefesh, the cognitive and the emotive. And all of this happened al yidei gilui teres hachasidus shepal es hamshachas etzem pnimius haTorah. This all happened through the gilui of teres hachasidus that effectuated the flow of the essence of pnimius haTorah. And what else happened? Another cell in the chart, that through this was nimshach the yechida shebin neshama, which is the etzem of neshama. And once you reveal the yechida, again, all the distinctions fall away within the neshama itself, the hidden parts of the neshama, the revealed parts of the neshama. And his spiritual service. This effectuates that the emuna and the kabbalas all should be suffused in all of the inner aspects of the person. And because when you reveal the etzem haneshama, you reveal the etzem of all the keches of the person, and therefore atzmos suffuses all the aspects of the person. And the same is true in the macrocosm. Hasiba lazeh shal yidei Yutas Kislev nitan koyach sheroshei Alpha Yisrael yamdu begoli bekiruv. And what provided the possibility and the impetus that the heads of Bnei Yisrael should stand shoulder to shoulder in a revealed way and in a closeness and in a oneness with all of the rest of Bnei Yisrael, because again, Yutas Kislev effectuated the Bechina of Yechida in the national soul of Bnei Yisrael, Shemitzida Nasim Hakishur Ba'achibor Shel Koima Acha Shlema Di Yisrael Ad La'ofen Shel Yachid. Because once you expose the Yechida of Klal Yisrael, then you create a connection and a unity of the entire body, until you can only refer to it as one body, Yachid. And this also expresses itself, like the Rebbe says in Seif Vav, Mitzad Oires B'Giluyim Ein Yochel Liyos B'Golu Chibur Olam Im Or Eliki. So, next cell, Rebbe says, and in Chassidus we always learn that there's Oires and there's Kelim. There's ways in which there's the revealed aspect, and then there's the way in which it's kind of tethered to and limited by the external expression. So the or of a book are the ideas, and the kalim are the words. And you don't have a book if you don't have the ideas, and you don't have a book if you only have the ideas and you don't have the words. So, but through the giluyim of Yutas Kislev, through the giluyim of Atzmos, you're able to override a feature of the world, which is that there can't be a in a revealed way, the connection between the world and the Ar Eliki Shelamayla Min Ha'elamais. Because the whole notion of the world is to be a keli for this Ar, is to obfuscate it. So under normal circumstances, you can't have a connection between the light and the medium that is meant to in some way mitigate or eclipse the light. Because the whole idea of this light is that it's mugdar begeder. It's categorized in a certain category, which means it's limited. So therefore, the light that vivify it are limited by its expression and can't be revealed. It's only from the atzmus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shehu amitas hametzius b'hu hanoiseh hakol. And the Eibishter is the only actual existence. Everything else is contingent on the Eibishter's will, right? So the Eibishter is the only amitas hametzius b'hu noiseh hakol. And the Eibishter carries all paradoxes and all oxymorons and all dichotomies. There's no impossible for the Eibishter. And only on that level, Yitachin Shatia Metzius Yesh, V'yesh Zegufa Yemiyuchad Im HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'tachlis HaYichud. And only in this place is there a possibility for there to be Yesh, something that feels itself as an independent existence, and at the same time is unified with Hashem in a complete unity. In other words, under normal circumstances, the spark has to be subsumed in the fire. It doesn't feel itself as a separate entity. But Chassidus made that there should be able to be the possibility of a yesh, and at the same time, the yesh should be unified with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'tachlis hayichud, in the ultimate unification. We understand how everything is part of the Eibishter, but that something should feel itself independent, kaviyachol, and still be united completely. How, like, what does that look like? What does it look like when you can identify the spark in the flame? Yud Beis. החידוש והפעולה של יפוצו מהנסך החוצה, איחוד העצם, המעיין עם החוצה. So the novelty and the effect of Yifutzu Ma'anesecha Chutza created that there's no more Chutza. It completely united the Etzem, the Mayan, with the Chutza. And Ba L'dei Bitui Dafka, and this comes to full expression specifically, Ka'asher HaMayanis Magiyim Ad Bechinas Chutza, Shehi B'Loshen Chayk Mari V'Chami Admar, Loi B'Mokam HaMuchshar. Where do you see this? When the Ma'ayanis express themselves and manifest in places that don't seem fitting for this, that don't seem appropriate for this. I've resisted so many things I wanted to say, but now I'm unable to resist. So those of you that saw that very funny clip about people in Argentina in Spanish trying to figure out what the newly elected president was saying, that he's going to America for oil, and they're trying to parse the oil. He said he was going to the oil. He's going to the oil. And they're sitting there on TV. This is not a spoof, trying to figure out what he's going to do first. So like if you ever had a place, loy b'makam muchshar, I wouldn't say that this is the place that's fitting for showcasing the Rebbe's oil. Anyway, just so not in a place that's seemingly primed, appropriate, fitting for Mayanis. Yechelas haMayanis lachdar bechutza kazeh, the possibility for the wellspring to pervade chutza, that kind of chutza that is seemingly inappropriate, unprimed, unfitting. Shemitzad atzmai eina kli va'afilu eina mokam hamuchshar leklitas hamayanis. Not only is it not a vessel, is it not an appropriate conduit, but it's not even a place that is primed for possibly becoming a proper conduit. Hirak mikoyach giluy ha'etzem shel hamayanis. This comes only from the revelation of the essence of the wellspring, asher b'yosei ha'etzem shel elokus v'shel amitas hametzios, because it is the essence of elokus, which is the only true existence. Harehu ha'etzem v'amitas hametzios shel kol hanivroim, and it is the essence and the only true existence of all of creation. Ulefichach, and therefore it pervades and suffuses the outlying aspects that in and of themselves would not be fitting. So maybe an example could be that when a person is, we're all vivified by an overarching energy, and that overarching energy expresses itself and brings to life every aspect of the body, not just like the most important and not just the most obvious and not just the most integral, but every aspect, every last cell in the dead skin that's going to be, taken off in the next shower or whatever. In other words, there's nothing that is not encompassed in and vivified by something that is as globally existential, that is atzmus. And this is the explanation between the two this is the connection between the two explanations for the revelation of Teres Chasidus in these latter generations. On one hand, on one hand, it's because of the great darkness. It's the antidote to the darkness. And on the other, this is a taste of the revelations that are to come in the immediate future. The revelation of the essence of Pnimis HaTorah, because the essence of Pneumius HaTorah expresses itself in its ability to irradiate the darkness of these latter generations, so much so that this darkness turns to light. ומזה גופה מובן הטעם לכך שהטעימה מתרסה של משיח בערב שבת אחרי חצות היא דווקא בזמן שבו מתחזק חושך הגלות. And now we understand why tasting of the terasa shel Mashiach in this Erev Shabbos Achrei Chatzos, in this Mamish Erev Lichbenchen, is dafka in a time where the darkness of Golos is so overwhelming. Until it becomes this doubled and redoubled darkness of the generation of Ikras the Mashiach, because it is exactly in this manner of the biggest revelations unfolding in a time of greatest darkness that gives us a taste of the Torah Mashiach, gives us a taste of the Etzem Pnimius HaTorah, of the essence of Torah, of Pnimius HaTorah, lahachdir or b'choshech hagadol b'yoser, to suffuse light into the greatest darkness, ad shahachoshech atzma ya'ir v'layla kayom ya'ir, like in such a way until the darkness itself becomes a source of illumination. Like the Navi says, night becomes like day. Yud Gimel. Al pikol anal, based on everything above, move on gam hakesher ben shnei hapirushim shal veyivaser Yaakov levadai. So now, circling back to the beginning of the Sikha, on the words Vayivaser Yaakov levadai, Yaakov remained alone. One explanation was he remained alone lekadai, for his jug, for his pitcher, and the other, the levadai, shows us that he was in some way as alone in his uniqueness and spiritual stature as Hashem will be in the times of Mashiach. V'nizkav Hashem levadai, Hashem alone will be above and exalted above all else. But the Rebbe explains, Dafka bebir hapachin kitanim, but it's specifically in the way in which we refine the pachin kitanim, the last nitzaitzais that we have to deal with before Mashiach comes. Habirurim hayoisek tanim v'tachtoinim, the smallest and the lowest birurim, which is tachlis hachoshech v'helam v'hester, which embody the darkness and the obfuscation and the way in which godliness is shrouded. It's dafkin that nikar morgash toichen unekudas ha'inishal v'niskav Hashem levadai. It's dafkin that service that we can recognize and we can feel the essence and the point of the whole idea of the Hashem's exaltedness. Because the way in which Hashem is singular and exalted, Achdus Hashem is not found in the base medrash. It's found in the way that on TV these hapless anchors are trying to figure out what this guy is saying about the oil. That's how you have the emes of the idea that Hashem is levadayu, Hashem is one. But this is shemitzad atzmusa yisbarach, because of the essence of Hashem. Asher mitzius hayesh eina b'stira lachdus shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. See, in normal paradigms, right, Chassidus teaches that yesh is the biggest stira to Elokus. Our feelings of yeshus, our feelings of the self, are the beginning of all spiritual pathologies. But then on the level of atzmos, the metzius hayesh, the existence of the autonomous self, is not a contradiction to the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki mitzad atzmusa yizbarach, hine atzmus hametzius shel hayesh hanivra, hi hayesh hamitis. Because the yesh of the person is fueled by atzmus of Hashem, therefore the yesh hanivra, the existence of the created being feeling its own existence, is actually a manifestation of of the Yesh HaEmes, of Hashem being the only Yesh. And that's something that Chassidus speaks about, how it's dafka in the guf that there's a Maila over the neshama. And so on and so forth, but it's really connected to this idea of a hifli, the higdil ba'aretz, in the land. So there's so many levels here. There are so many layers. But I think that as we approach Rosh Hashanah l'Chasidus, this Sikha can remind us of the tremendous gift and the tremendous schus. Mamish, like, what did we do to deserve to be in this generation and deserve to receive this gift and receive it on a silver platter? And what are we doing to push this gift out to more and more and more people, so that there's no chutzah, there's no daylight, there's no degree of separation. There is no separation. There are no distinctions. There are no categories. There are no chasidim and misnagdim. There's no separations whatsoever. So before we open up for Binyan, I just want to wish everybody Shana Teva, Umesuka, Darkei Chasidus, B'limit Chasidus, and we should be Zeicha Eisfern de Kavana. We should be Zeicha to do what the Eibshter wants from us, what the Rebbe wants and demands and needs from us in these last moments of this Galus. And I can't wait for the ultimate Zoom share. That's going to be in a whole different way. Somehow the technology it's all going to be merged in a whole different way.